Well, the challenges for our community are many. Economic impacts of ballot measure 5, public safety, education, urban growth, and so on. Last fall, the voters of the city recognized that they would need a strong leader to meet these challenges, one who could build consensus and work with others. They elected Vera Katz, and she was sworn in as our mayor in January. The first time I met Vera was in the mid-'80s when I was working on a research committee for the City Club. We were interviewing Vera as one of our witnesses, and I remember being struck by her ability to listen before responding, a talent that's all too rare among many of our political leaders today. She's also a very practical and down-to-earth individual. 2 weeks ago, City Club hosted a breakfast meeting for Laura Tyson, chair of President Clinton's Council of Economic Advisors. You may remember that that Friday was the Friday morning that Portland received a good deal of snow, and getting about was difficult at best. Well, Vera joined us that morning at the head table to welcome Laura Tyson, and she had on a beautiful turquoise suit and her hiking boots. Vera Katz has a long history of public service. She served in the House of Representatives and the Oregon Legislature beginning in 1973. She was Speaker of the House from 1985 to 1990. During her years in the legislature, she also served on a number of commissions and task forces dealing with broad-based issues including education, economics, mental health, juvenile and adult corrections, and alcohol and drug abuse. In addition to her governmental service, she has served as the Director of Development for Portland Community College. In recognition of her outstanding leadership contribution, she has received numerous awards from organizations such as the March of Dimes, the American Civil Liberties Union, Portland Public Schools, and many others. She received her Bachelor's of Arts degree and completed her Master of Arts Studies at Brooklyn College in New York. She joins us today to share her visions for the City of Portland and to elaborate further on her goals for the city's future, including the importance of acknowledging and embracing Portland's rich diversity. So please join me in welcoming our Mayor of the City of Portland, Vera Katz.
Thank you. And good afternoon. It feels good to be back with you talking on a topic that I haven't had an opportunity to share with an audience yet. And I'd like to thank the City Club for providing me this opportunity to address this important issue of economic opportunity for everybody. And since this is a particular talk to the minority populations in our community, I would like to ask the wonderful co-sponsors of this event to please stand up and be honored. Would you all please stand up? Co-sponsors. My appreciation for that, and certainly for TriMet. They got it. I'll be talking for about 30 minutes, trying to keep this presentation relatively brief so we have plenty of time for questions and answers. Before I start, though, I'd like to share something with you. In government, we sometimes seem to fight the same battles over and over again. This is from the April 19th, 1851 Oregonian. Quote, "The City Council has been duly organized, but what progress has been made by way of creating ordinances? We are not informed. It is to be hoped, however, that something will be speedily done to protect the persons and property of our citizens from lawless violation at the hands of desperados who come here to gamble, cheat, rob, and steal," unquote. Today, I would say to the Oregonian, we're still working on it, and it's only been 142 years. In the last couple of weeks, it's been a relatively joyous experience being mayor of the city, but it also can be a very frustrating one at times. And on those rare days that nothing seems to be going right, there is one thought that sustains me. It could be worse. I could be a state legislator. Ask most transplanted Californians what brought them to Oregon, and the answer usually boils down to our superior quality of life. We hear that phrase a great deal in the Northwest, usually about our natural beauty and our uncrowded landscape. Today, I want to talk about quality of life in a different context, one that speaks to our people, to our families, and to our children. Our true quality of life isn't just about rivers and mountains and open beaches. It's also about jobs that pay a living wage, a quality education, and a safe city. It has been said that now is the time to recognize that American cities remain the engines in our society. Time to remember that the cities are where the ideas spark, where our culture comes alive, our businesses grow, our arts and sciences advance. Time to remember that it is our cities in all their glorious diversity that define our nation, and that the cities must be made to succeed if America is to succeed. Our success as a city begins with its people working, being able to support themselves with dignity and at a decent standard of living. From that simple truth, all good things follow. Investment in home ownership, excellent schools, lower crime rates, decent housing, citizen participation and volunteerism, strong physical and human infrastructure, and tax support for local governmental programs. But I challenge anyone to name any government program that can provide more for a child than a healthy, economically independent family. I want a city government that is not just a service provider, but a community builder. One essential way we can do that is by helping families meet their economic needs. And for such community building to succeed, it must be built on a firm foundation of human investment, job creation, and the creation of wealth. And I want to make it very clear that job creation alone is not enough. We must also raise family incomes. Strategies to upgrade skills and increase the productivity of our businesses is a critical component. It is only with higher skills and higher performance businesses that higher wages will be possible and higher wages will be affordable. We need to ensure that our workforce will be educated to world-class standards and have the job skills to compete, not with Salem, not only with Eugene or Gresham or Beaverton or Vancouver, Washington, but with Taiwan, Japan, Germany, and Sweden. At the same time, we need to assist businesses in pursuing value-added strategies through the development of more complex products and a more productive work organizations. And we need to make sure that as businesses respond to a more complex world, that more and more of our citizens are not left behind. Unfortunately, the goalposts are rapidly moving out of reach for many in Portland. The big economic bang of the 1980s produced barely a whimper in inner city communities. This national neglect of our cities has a parallel in Portland. In the past, some of Portland's neighborhoods have been denied their share of jobs, bank loans, and even at times police protection. At a time when communities should be growing together, income disparity among our neighborhoods is widening. It is a situation that is unacceptable. Statistics help tell the story. In 1980, the unemployment rate in inner Northeast Portland was 29% above the rate in the region. By 1990, the gap had risen to 113%. Today, in Portland's outer southeast, in the Mount Scott, Arleta, Brentwood, Darlington area, unemployment stands 80% higher than the region. Per capita income in the region is 50% higher than in these distressed neighborhoods. These statistics provide only the barest picture of the disparate opportunities affecting our community. These numbers convey the painful truth that although our laws prohibit discrimination, many of our minority communities are disproportionately affected by poverty, by neglect, and by crime. These figures show that despite a decade of enforcement and civil rights laws, neglect of many urban problems has sown the seeds of where we are today. We can do better, and we must do better. It's been said that the third wave of the civil rights movement will be economic empowerment. So the question for all of us is, what can city government do differently to empower more people to attain their own economic wealth? The challenge before us is to bring about change and create an environment that provides social and economic opportunity for all of our citizens, no matter what their ethnic background, their gender, their sexual orientation, and no matter where they live. If these problems remain unsolved, they would limit the future opportunities of all Portland citizens, and our quality of life will suffer. So again, what must be done differently? Just trying is not good enough anymore. For years, government has been developing committees and task forces and one process after another. We must now force ourselves to commit to getting results from those efforts. That commitment means measuring the results of our efforts and holding ourselves accountable to fix systems that don't work. Ultimately, economic progress depends on our ability to draw upon the talent and skills of all of our people. My remarks today will focus on three critical areas of empowering minorities and women toward economic opportunity. Three areas that the city must play a vital role in: minority contracting, affirmative action, and economic and workforce development. First, minority contracting. We must change our own business practices. Improving our record on minority contracting has been identified as one of the highest priorities of the current City Council. And today, I'm announcing a series of recommendations which hopefully will become a City Council package of reforms to increase the number of minority and female-owned contractors doing business with the City of Portland. How the city uses its considerable leverage in hiring contractors for construction projects has been debated endlessly. We must move from debate to action. We are currently working on a package of reforms designed to improve our track record of hiring minority contractors. It will require the city's prime contractors to engage in more outreach to minority and women contractors and subcontractors. It will encourage those contractors to hire more minorities and women. It will require a more systematic documentation of their outreach efforts toward minority and female-owned businesses. These reforms will increase the monitoring of the equal opportunity status of city vendors and contractors. That means contractors and vendors will be required to submit copies of their workforce rosters that they already have with racial, gender, and age information clearly indicated for all employees. A separate piece of this reform package is moving toward immediate implementation. Next week, I will bring to the City Council reforms that will require that every bureau obtain at least 3 bids, with at least 1 bid from a minority business enterprise or a female business enterprise contractor on all professional service contracts, and to notify the city auditor of the results of their efforts. She, in turn, will publish the results on a quarterly basis. This information will allow the City Council to better monitor whether the companies who are receiving the benefits of the city's business are sharing those benefits equitably throughout the city. The Council package of reforms will authorize cooperation with the Port of Portland and TriMet to enhance the bonding capacity of minority and female contractors, which appears to be a very critical barrier. I strongly support the efforts already being taken by the Port and TriMet to facilitate an increased number of bonded minority and women prime and subcontractors. In addition to these and other minority contracting reforms, I'm working with City Commissioner Gretchen Kafori, who's here with us today, and Commissioner Charlie Hales, who's in Washington, D.C., lobbying for us, to create a guaranteed minority loan program to help fund startup contractor operating costs and to begin the positive fostering of relationships between minority contractors and the financial institutions and commercial lenders. It's imperative that we pay more attention to the hiring of women and minorities for construction jobs on city-financed projects. The minority and female apprentices of today will be the minority and female contractors of the future. Unless we make strong efforts to diversify the construction trades, we won't see much long-term change. We have reason to be concerned that the fruits of the city's construction dollars are not being shared by our diverse community. A recent study conducted by our city attorney's office confirms the concerns which have been expressed for some time by our minority community, especially the African Americans and the Hispanic community, who believe they have been shut out of business and employment opportunities in construction. The study examined the workforce records from all contractors who have received city public works contracts of over $50,000 in the last year. What we found was alarming. The total number of employees in this group was over 1,500. Out of 1,500 individuals, only 14 were African American. Out of 1,500 individuals, 0 were Asians. Out of 1,500 individuals, only 16 were Native American. Out of 1,500 individuals, 45 were Hispanic. The total percentage of minorities who were working in the construction trades for these various companies was under 5%, and that compares to a minority population in Portland of about 17%, and this compares to a qualified minority construction workforce of up to 20% in this region. And then if you look at the picture even further, it doesn't get much better when you look at the types of jobs which are available to minority construction workers. For the 75 minority employees for whom specific job information was available, 36 were laborers, the lowest paid construction workers on the list. This means that 54, more than half of the minorities who did find jobs in this group, did so at the lowest level in industry. Now, I think we can expect better than this from those who obtain the benefits of our business. I've personally met, and others have met, with the Portland Trailblazers and the Oregon Arena Corporation, and they have committed to leading the way in ensuring that minorities and women are employed on their construction jobs. We must also consider whether the city has done enough to respond to the Supreme Court very restrictive decision in Croson versus Richmond, a case which required a total rethinking of minority contracting set-aside programs. Since Croson required the dismantling of existing minority set-aside programs which were simply aimed at making sure that minority and women-owned firms obtain some of the benefits of government contracting, such firms, since that decision, have received an ever-diminishing share of regional business opportunities. But on the good side, since the Croson decision, cities like Seattle and San Francisco have moved ahead and made the investment in studies aimed at reinstating contracting programs whose purpose is to ensure that minority firms are able to obtain their fair share of government opportunities. The state, the city, and the counties have dragged their feet on making the investment in such studies, disparity studies, in our region. I'm committed to providing the leadership to work with other regional governments and the state to see how we can do better. Because all of this boils down to the same fundamental issue. When we empower our people to work, to form businesses, to provide for their families, we empower our community to move forward. Affirmative action. Although the city performs better than much of the private sector, the City Council is committed to improving the city's record on affirmative action. I intend to direct a vigorous examination of the ways in which the city's recruitment, testing, selection, retention, all the personnel practices may be improved and streamlined. I intend to hold all city bureaus, including my own, accountable for meeting affirmative action goals when it really counts during the budget process. For the first time, the mayor's budget will include affirmative action information for each and every bureau for each and every budget cycle. Economic and workforce development. We have not tapped the full potential of the economic strength and diversity of our entire population, but especially our minority population. They have not historically been included in the economic mainstream. And one of the key strategies to developing minority and women entrepreneurs is to provide them access to capital and professional assistance. When communities are not supported to make their dreams of financial, economic independence a reality, hope is lost and suspicions grow. The needs of our minority communities must not only be met, but must include their participation as equal stakeholders in the growth of Portland's prosperity. That includes help in starting new businesses, sustaining existing businesses, participating and benefiting from major community investments such as the Blazer Arena and the new Walnut Park Police Precinct and retail development. Failure of minority entrepreneurship to thrive deprives all of us of potential growth and creates socioeconomic injustice with its attendant social and governmental costs. Worst of all, it undermines hope. In the weeks to come, I will be appointing a mayor's business roundtable to broaden the base of economic advice the city receives. Some of you in this room will be asked to participate. I will work with the roundtable not only to put in place a new diverse economic development strategy for the city, but to critically review and monitor our actions as they affect our business climate. My charge to the roundtable will be to ensure that all of our efforts address the critical economic needs of the city, with a special target for Northeast Portland and Southeast. One thing is clear: for any economic strategy to be successful, must address the role of city government, workforce training, and revitalization. First, government must be a tool for getting people to invest their money and create jobs here in Portland, not a barrier to drive them away. The collective load of regulations, policies, fees, taxes, which government requires, must be critically examined to ensure that Portland's businesses are not at a competitive disadvantage. A second component of a family wage economic strategy must be workforce development. In the coming months, we will produce a workforce development strategy directly linked to our economic development agenda. The investment in human capital is among the most important contributions government can make to sustain a high quality of life. The City of Portland is currently responsible for spending millions of dollars on workforce training programs for adult and young people. As part of our economic development planning process, we'll be taking a hard look at those investments. What's working, what's not working, and how can we change? We've got to get serious about results. Ronnie Herndon, who addressed the City Club just recently, said, "We will finally demonstrate our commitment to economic empowerment of minorities when we, like the private sector, set specific goals for ourselves. We must then set about deploying our resources to meet those goals and regularly and honestly evaluate our progress." And this at many times is going to be very uncomfortable. It's even going to be painful. Not everybody will be happy. But if we keep our goals at the forefront, we can make hard choices that need to be made. Now, the City of Portland is certainly not alone in this effort to develop the workforce. The public schools, the community colleges, the system of higher education, and the scores of public and private organizations are involved. Part of the city's role, and a part in which I intend to play an active role, is in acting as a catalyst for change, moving us toward those goals. Our ultimate success will depend on the strength of the partnerships that we build. We need a complete overhaul of our learning systems in order to train workers for high-performance companies. Companies need to know what high-performance organizations mean. We know that education plus investment translates into productivity, and productivity translates into a better standard of living. And the Oregon legislature must remain steadfast in their support and follow through on Oregon's Educational Reform Act for the 21st century. They must stay the course. The third component of any development strategy must focus on key target industries. With our target industry strategy, we will do several things. Create policies to stimulate the development of key strategies for Portland as well as this region. Develop the physical infrastructure needed to help them succeed. And again, educate and train workers with the skills necessary to ensure that companies that want to stay or companies that want to relocate can be on the leading edge in product and in service development. These proposals, more closely tracking the city's affirmative action results, reforms to the city's contracting process, and a more broadly based economic development policy focused on the entire city, but specifically on our disadvantaged neighborhoods, will send a loud and clear message that the opportunity to work and the opportunity to create wealth and contribute to society is precious, and it must be nurtured, and it must be protected, and it must be extended to all. But none of our efforts will succeed unless people are safe and secure in their neighborhoods. We must do more to combat the ever-growing gang and drug problem. The word on the street must be clear. Criminal gang activity is taken seriously in this city, and there are strong sanctions for those who engage in it. I intend that Portland be ready for a long, hot summer when gang crimes are traditionally at their worst. As police commissioner, I'm working with the Bureau to move 15 more officers in a strengthened gang enforcement team. But the key is to stop our children and youth from heading down the dead-end street of gang membership in the first place. It's a fact that once they are tagged as criminals by the justice system, they go to the bottom of any labor market. their chance of ever living independent lives is nearly destroyed. That's why I'm also working with Multnomah County to integrate their social service programs into a more comprehensive response to the gang problem on the streets. A response that I hope will result in earlier intervention, especially for those youngsters on the fringe, and a more effective use of our existing resources. To that end, I also tell Representative Dave Mateague that I'm strongly supporting a legislative package to invest $5 million, a pittance in lottery dollars, to provide youth employment and job skills for 2,500 gang-involved, gang-affected, or at risk of becoming gang-affected youth. It is no longer a Portland problem. These are legislators from the region and from the rest of the state that want to see a financial commitment being made to deal with this issue in their neighborhoods. We must give our youth an economic alternative to the easy money of drugs and crime and provide them the opportunities to build more skills, pride, and self-respect. The city and our congressional delegation are working together to attract federal job retraining and public works funding, but we can't count on it and we can't wait for it. The business community must go beyond writing checks for favorite charities. They must offer incentives for employees to volunteer their time and lend key executives for public service. City Hall can provide seed money, but best of all, it can harness the vast human energy of this city. We can mobilize our neighborhoods. We can summon our churches. We can enlist our civic groups. By force of example, by talking about the issues, by bringing people together, I truly believe that we can make change happen. During the campaign, Congressman Maxine Waters came and spoke at a fundraiser for me. And Maxine said we must open the doors of City Hall to minority business, that the voices of the poor and the voices of the women should be heard and will be heard in government. And so for Maxine, we're now trying to work together to deliver on those promises. But what does that mean? It means that you and I have to work hard at talking about our problems and how we're going to face them. I'm ready to commit to finding new ways to do business. I'm prepared to go to the federal government and ask for waivers, for pilot programs, and for money to make real changes. I've been at the state legislature to address Portland's needs as well. I can do a lot of work, but none of it will mean a thing if that work isn't been built on plans that we develop together. It can't be Vera Katz's vision of economic development in Lentz. It must be a shared vision of that community and city government, along with the energy and the input of the private sector. I guess the essence of what I'm trying to say is that the doors of City Hall are open, and by the way, they're open today, first come, first serve, from 3 to 6:30, and sometimes we stay until 7. But the time for business, minorities, the poor, and others to simply critique our plans is past. I challenge each of you to work at the grassroots level with your business associations, your neighborhoods groups, your community organizations. Let's get working to articulate what we want to have changed, but more importantly, how we're going to do it as a community. We must keep alive the dream of opportunity that Portland represents to its residents, old and new, rich and poor, native-born and immigrant. To the members of the audience who came here from another country looking for a second chance, I too was an immigrant. As one who was born in the old world, I still see America as the promised land. I came to this country as a child with literally nothing except a mother who loved me and taught me one thing above all else. Education meant opportunity. Opportunity meant I could be anything I wanted to be. I could do anything I wanted to do, which is something I remind all youngsters anytime I see them. So I call upon you to exercise your powers, to work with me and the council to help provide more opportunity for more people to control their lives and destinies. Leaders can heal or divide. They can call on people to participate and give them ways to solve problems, or they can sit back and play politics. I know that my proposals today offer only a partial solution at best. Much more needs to be done. Strengthening families takes persistent, ongoing effort, but we are in this fight for the long duration. And these are positive steps we can take now to improve the true quality of life for every citizen in this community. I emphasize now because of what James Baldwin once wrote, and I quote, "There is never a time in the future in which we will work out our salvation. The challenge is in the moment. The time is always now." Opportunity, empowerment, growing independence, and hope. This is the moment, and now is the time. Thank you.
Thanks, Vera. And now is the time for questions. And the first one goes to Judith Ramaley from Portland State, the second one from Steve Poland, and then we will open it up to questions from City Club members as well as members of the co-sponsoring organizations to line up behind the microphone. We have two of them here on the floor. We don't have a lot of time for questions, so I'll ask you to keep them brief, and we again are looking for questions, not comments. If you're not sure which is the difference, a question ends in a question mark. So Judith?
Well, as the hostess, I must thank Mayor Katz for believing in this community and for providing us a clear roadmap for what each of us can do to give opportunity to everyone. I've heard you say that we'll make Portland better for everyone, one child, one family, one street at a time. You've placed the Walnut Park project very high on your list of priorities. I would be interested in knowing why you think this project is so important as a first step, and what we can learn from it about what city government can do to open up economic opportunity for everyone.
Thank you. I must admit I knew the question. I'm not sure I know the answer, but no. I inherited the opportunity for Walnut Park. Decisions were made about a year and a half that the node of Killingsworth and Martin Luther King was critical for the development of Northeast Portland, and especially critical along Martin Luther King Boulevard, and that was expressed over and over again by the Albina Plan and by the Portland planning commissioners. The city identified the property. It's, by the way, a historic property and has long history in Northeast Portland. It's the Fred Meyer store that's been long abandoned. Identified the property and said, well, let's give them over $800,000, a very low bid because they knew they would have to go to court. Property was assessed at $1.2 million. We ended up in court and it was negotiated at $1.3. That also included lawyer fees and other fees. So in fact, we received the property at a lower than the assessed valuation. That's for those of you who question the financial wisdom of buying this piece of real estate. But more important, here was a perfect example where Portland Development Commission, where General Services, where other members in city government actually sat down and worked with the community in North and Northeast Portland to design what they wanted this critical node to look like. a North Precinct station, a new North Precinct station needed, the opportunity for retail and commercial development underneath the station or alongside the station for, hopefully, minority small businesses living and working in the community, a public plaza, a Portland Athletic League, a PAL program within the police station, and I think a commitment from the boys and girls on that site. Across the street, there are other possibilities. So it was a critical mass for three important components with the community working with government to make it happen. I think it's a wise investment. It is time that we looked in our neighborhoods. We invested a lot of money with urban renewal in the downtown area. It's time that we looked in our neighborhoods and made that investment. And that is a sound investment in Northeast Portland, and hopefully it will begin to send a loud and clear message that we're serious about Northeast, we're serious about Martin Luther King Boulevard, and we want everybody else to begin making that investment along with us.
My name is Dave Olson, member. Mayor Katz, the city owns numerous parking lots, and it would seem to me that that would open up an opportunity for minority business, because the last time I checked, the Goodman family had a monopoly. So I wonder if you see some possibilities there.
It is a possibility, as well as other possibilities that we have in the city. That particular contract went out to bid before I came on board, but it did go out to bid, and the Goodman family was selected as the contractor. But anything is a possibility, and to the extent that we can provide the assistance and make that kind of commitment in terms of the bidding contracts to make sure that at least one of those bids that for our agencies to consider come from the minority and female-owned community, will have a better chance in the future on that one and on others.
Perhaps you could have a minority parking lot near this building and get them downtown on the max.
Mayor Katz, I'm Steve Poland with the Education Subcommittee. As a legislator, you've obviously made a major commitment to the quality of education in Oregon. And our question is, as mayor and basically the manager of one of the larger employers in town, what can the city do to provide an example for other businesses in ways to facilitate individual parent participation in their schools and other sorts of partnerships with the schools?
That's an excellent question, and I've been struggling with what is it that the city can do. Well, first of all, the city is a critical partner at the Leaders Roundtable. Judith Romali is on the executive committee, so am I. Critical partner with a goal that every child in 8th grade finishes their high school education by 1996. 0 dropout, a very high, lofty goal. The question is, what can we as a city do to make sure that youngsters are found, are in a school, in a regular or an alternative program, and where we begin, as House Bill 3565, to require parental involvement in the schools. The issue is that for many schools, they are reluctant to get parents directly involved in the school and in the classroom. And I think it is a terrible mistake when we don't open that opportunity for parents' involvement. And one of the things I want to look at is whether our community-based organizations, especially the neighborhood associations, who have spent historically their commitment and their time and their energy on land use policies, to also begin to look at educational policies and how they can bring families and the community to bear on the school board and to the community schools to make sure that there are opportunities for families to get involved, especially now with the financial situation in our Portland public schools. Now, let me respond one more time on that issue. At some point, if there is no resolution to the funding of our schools, at some point, we as a community need to get involved and say, there's got to be another response. And I have told some of my legislative colleagues, if Portland decides to solve the issue themselves, and we can, it will be very detrimental to the region and to the other communities around the state. It's not a threat, it's a reality, because I don't think people in this community or in this room are willing to give up their public school system. And I think at some time, the time is not now, but my sense is it's coming much faster at us to get together and say the solution has to come from here.
Hi, my name is Cameron Stewart. I'm
Hi.
a member of the City Club Youth Forum. I was wondering how we as youth can become more involved in the implementation of your Educational Reform Act and learn more about it.
First of all, stay in school. Second of all, have very high expectations for yourselves and demand that the school has high expectations for you as a student, because the world-class standards that we need to attain isn't going to be an easy task to get it from the teacher education programs, though Judith is working on it, to the teachers, to you. Make sure that the parents and the community are involved. They're a wonderful asset to be involved directly in the classroom. And stand up for your rights, but your major and the most important right is to be educated, and to be educated at world-class levels.
Thank you.
And learn 2 foreign languages while you're doing that.
Mayor Katz, I'm Bill Ray, a member of the American Indian Association of Portland.
Yes, hello.
Former Mayor Clark met monthly with the American Indian Association of Portland to help develop a plan for an Indian Cultural Center in the Portland area. In December, the City of Portland, the council, approved the extension of holding for the American Indian community a site on East Delta Park for the Indian Cultural Center. It is important that we continue the progress begun under former Mayor Clark toward the Cultural Center. When will you meet with the Indian community leaders about the Cultural Center, and who are you going to designate as a staff liaison to the Indian community? Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, yes, I am committed to the Cultural Center. I am in the process of developing a monthly calendar to meet on a regular basis with citizens groups that have asked me formally to meet with them on particular issues. The person to call is Rosie at 823, she's going to love this, 4120. The staff person assigned is either Rosie or myself.
Walt Roberts, City Club member. Mayor Katz, you talked about shared vision, about being careful about measuring our results and being held accountable for outcomes. And my question has to do with Portland Future Focus and what role that process and project, what role do you see Portland Future Focus having in allowing our community to work together towards a positive future for all throughout?
Thank you. A little history. I was very involved in the creation of the Oregon Progress Board with the charge to create Oregon benchmarks. So I'm very familiar with Portland Future Focus, trying to move in that, not only create the vision for the city, but then see how to develop benchmarks for results. It is my intention that the benchmarks for results be developed as soon as possible. In fact, during the budget process, since very few of the bureaus have measurable benchmarks that are meaningful, developed tied to the budget process, which is what the Oregon benchmarks have done, it is my intent to work this fiscal year for the police and fire bureaus, as well as the beginning of those benchmarks for economic development. I'm going to try to be ahead of the game on that. The rest of the work is going to have to be done by the Future Focus committees and by a parallel to the Oregon Progress Board, which would be the Oregon Future Focus Board, so that you have a smaller executive group focusing in on those benchmarks and changing them when necessary. So you have my commitment to that. It's a very dear project to me.
Okay. Normally we would wrap up at 1:15, but Mayor Katz has agreed to take a few extra questions. So again, if you could keep them brief, we'll extend for a little bit. If you do need to leave, please feel free to do that, but do so quietly.
Estimada Alcalde Katz, my name is Jose Romero. I'm a member of the Hispanics for Unity in Oregon. You've touched upon it briefly, but it's such an issue these days regarding education. For example, I'd like to know in a little more detail what role you and the city of Portland plan to play in the current public school crisis. As you know, Portland Public Schools expects to receive a $50 million cut in 93, 94, and it's going to become worse in the years to come. These cuts are in the face of increasing student enrollments, especially from the minority community. This comes in the face of the ed reform bill that's going to cost some money, and none is projected. And I believe that to some extent the district's hands are tied, but they need help from others as well. And so I'd like more detail on what you plan on doing.
First of all, I am shocked by the dropout numbers for the Hispanic youngsters that are higher than I think for every other ethnic minority group. And that's a critical concern of mine. I have committed to Jack Bearworth, and we met early on, that I will be down in the legislature working for additional school funding. Now, what's been happening in the legislature right now is an attempt to move off stalemate. Until they were able to identify what we call a Ways and Means dollar figure, nothing was going to happen. My sense, now that the first step has been taken, that they are ready to begin seriously looking at the other budgets. I have a deep faith in my former institution that they will not allow ugly, terrible things to happen to the state, and that at some future time there will be a resolution on at least a portion of the problem. Now, that sends mixed messages, because some of them want to send the message you got to cut before you come out and find a final solution. But on the other hand, we can't leave with the disaster on our hands, not only in education, in the human resources area. Difficult situations, especially in the next biennium. So I have committed first to help Jack mobilize the forces in the legislature to come back at the appropriate time and to get real about the problem. In the past, I took the issue of the sales tax to the voters in 1985, moved it out of the legislature to give us the opportunity as a state to vote on the issue of a sales tax to finance education and lower property taxes. Unfortunately, it was rejected by the voters. I'm prepared to do it again. And as I said, I'm also prepared to do it in Portland if we need to do it.
Hi, Mayor Katz. My name is Maisha Rayford, and I'm a member of the City Club Youth Forum. And my question is, how do you plan on including young people in your process for the future of Portland, and will we be allowed in the process with our concerns and our ideas?
Oh, you bet. You bet. And now let me make you an offer. We have an ombudsman program. Michael Mills is sitting over there, and Cheryl Hunter Morales is sitting over there at the table, and they are looking for interns, young people who have the energy to begin working through some of the problems that our citizens bring to us, I have to tell you, on a daily basis. So the offer is extended that if you are really interested in understanding how city government works, how we try to resolve problems, we can't resolve them all, but we can do a lot of work through the mayor's office and through the other commissioner's office and the bureaus, the door is open for you. He's sitting there, he's wearing, Michael, Cheryl, stand up. Talk to him.
Hello, this is Barbara Clark.
She's our city auditor, Barbara Clark.
Following up on Steve Cohen's question about the city as an employer. The city is doing better than the private sector in hiring minorities and females. Are the city having plans to set a good example in providing incentives for volunteer work by their employees?
I didn't get the question. What?
You were talking about businesses providing incentives for their employees to volunteer.
Oh.
And I'm asking, is there any efforts afoot in the city to do that for the city employees?
Yes, and I'm not going to announce it today because the work has not really begun. But part of what I envision somewhere down the road, maybe after the 4th month in office, is the development of a very serious effort on volunteer programs within the community, especially within the business community, within getting parents involved with the schools, and a way for us to allow city employees to set that example. We will be putting those pieces together. By the way, let me thank Auditor Barbara Clark for her help in developing an audit report on contractors, and with her recommendations and the work of Commissioner Kafuri and Commissioner Lindbergh's office and their staff, we've been able to put a package of this minority contracting together. The work isn't done. There is more to come. One more question. Oh, 2 more questions.
I'm Paul Milius. I'm a City Club member.
3 more questions.
My question will go to affirmative action. In working with the hiring processes in not only city government, but state and county as well, I find them to be driven, very legalistic, protracted, and cumbersome, and seem to be driven by fear of the middle managers in the bureaucracy that at some point someone will criticize them for hiring decisions that they have made. So they rely very heavily on numerically scored exams and interviews and so on. What can you do as mayor to pry loose some of the bureaucratic layers that have suffocated this program and I think tend to work against minority hiring, and to free your middle managers from the fear that they're going to get dumped on if someone decides to sue or bring a court action or what have you?
Right. Good question. First of all, the personnel portfolio is in the mayor's office. And after I finish some of the tasks that I'm working on, focus will be made on personnel. Second, many of the bureaus now don't provide a score. The workers are certified. 10, 11 workers certified. Some of the bureaus use 2 lists, some don't. And they then have the opportunity not to use a scored base to select candidates for employment. Now, what I want to do is move away, just the way we need to move away in education, from the paper and pencil exams only, and look at performance-based examinations. After all, people do hard labor work, or they do computer work, or they do other work with their hands, and we don't measure that. To provide a paper and pencil test for somebody who trims trees in the Parks Bureau, for me, as just a layperson, is not terribly wise. So we need to begin to develop exams where they actually are hands-on. It is very similar to the apprenticeship, to the training for job skills that we want to do in the high schools in the 11th and 12th grade. That's moving. I got to tell you, though, you're absolutely right. Very slowly. Once I get my hands into the whole area of personnel, I intend to push and prod that piece. Let me just give you an example. In math exams, where minorities and women tend to do worse for all the reasons you and I know, there isn't a policy about calculators. So all the math exams had to be done with pencil and paper. Now, in schools today, we use calculators. And if you don't think about distributing calculators, you're going to get skewed results. So these are the rather simple, that rather being simple policy has never been really, from what I understand, established. So once I get my focus into that area, I know that's an area of your expertise, and leave me a card and I will call. Yes.
Good afternoon, Vera. My name is Laura Campos, and I've been following the progress of the Northeast Albina Plan, and it seems to me from reading the proposals put out by the Planning Commission that they've included some specific policies that would address some of the social problems you spoke about. But I've heard that those policies may get cut due to funding, lack of funding. Is that true, or?
No, we were just briefed on the Albina Plan, and it's a very exciting document that took a very broad perspective of the Albina community, far more than land use. It went into social policies, economic policies. The issue that came up was, how are you going to implement it? The recommendation was, give us half a staff person to implement it. And I said, no. There's got to be a better way to implement this plan than adding another staff person to make sure it's happening, because we've got the people already who worked, bless their hearts, 4 years on this document, truly vested and committed, really being stakeholders. And I think if we bring them into the process, they can carefully monitor it. And we ought to monitor it through the Portland Future Focus groups, who also have charges of how to make this community a better place to live in. It's okay. You can clap. Thank you.